He spent his whole life wallowing in envy, forever watching other people's triumphs as he sank further into oblivion. Every day he wondered what he was missing. He hears his voice calling to him from the void. He offers salvation from this suffering. He offers a chance to escape his useless existence, this path to nothingness. He asks him to give him this chance. He does not care what the price of rebirth will be, he will pay it. They said that every great mind has a note of madness. Madness is what opens the way to new heights. But is this greatness worth the madness? The girl raised her weapon and attacked the dragon. From the very beginning of history, terrible monsters have filled this world, but powerful adventurers fought this creature and protected the human race from extinction. The girl got dirty in the blood of the dragon. Her name is Alexandria. She is the 4th in the world ranking of adventurers. When he sees the strongest adventurers, he can't help but be jealous. From their fearlessness to their great strength, this is something he can only dream of. How can he become like them? From the strong blow of the man, the monsters were thrown into the sky. His name is Silenus. He is the 5th in the world ranking of adventurers. Another man saw his blow and whistled, and the guy standing next to him admired the power of the 4 horsemen. The man smiled and told him not to drool on him, he was embarrassing him. His name is Tor. He is the 3rd in the world ranking of adventurers. Next to him was a guy named Eon, who was his personal assistant. He scratched the back of his head and apologized to Tor. He said that when the world's strongest are right in front of him, he can't help but be excited. After all, one day he wants to be like him. Tor smiled at his words and said it was a good dream. Silenus approached them and asked Eon, "Did he bring those snacks?" he said. Alexandria also came over and asked Eon if he had a mana potion. "She is exhausted," he replied that everything is here. Alexandria asked Silenus was he going to eat in the middle of the dungeon? Eat in the middle? He replied that it was just a snack. Alexandria asked what about them. They were just there to watch him and Silenus clear the dungeon? So it's S rank, it's not a joke to them. Eon sighed and handed them the things they asked for. Another adventurer landed next to them and asked, "But it doesn't feel like an S rank, does it?" His name is Arian. He is the 2nd ranked adventurer in the world. Alexandria said he was right. Monsters die easily, and it doesn't look like an S-ranked dungeon. Silenus took a bite of meat and said that the monsters here are more like A rank. Tor told him he'd better keep quiet. Arian said that the Emperor himself assigned a rank to this gate, and he also named it the Gate of Madness. If he called for 4 horsemen to clear it, it must be dangerous. Also, they felt the aura of the Infernal Lord when they entered here, didn't they? Eon thought. This is one of the 3 kings who created monsters and dungeons filled with them. No one has seen the Infernal Lord, but if this dungeon has such a high rank, doesn't that mean one of them might be here? He said he couldn't even kill a monster here. What will he do if the Infernal Lord appears? Tor asked if he was scared. This is not the first year in his service, he recognizes this face. Eon hesitated and Tor asked if something had ever happened to him on their missions. Eon said that this did not happen. Tor said that nothing would change even now. Let him not worry, he will not let him be offended. Eon thanked him, and a second later, there was an explosion behind them. They looked at the same time in the direction of the explosion, and Eon was surprised. There was a huge fiery monster in front of them. Tor said it was starting. The monster said that they came for the treasures of the Gates of Madness, but none of them understand their true nature. Here the only reward is madness. In the sky, a man was sitting on a floating throne. He said that he would see who was worthy of it. Alexandria told the dungeon boss that this is what she likes. Immediately after her words, the ground under her feet began to crumble. The next attack was heading for Eon. Tor noticed this and quickly picked up Eon and took off into the sky. He said that the dungeon boss is able to control the earth. Eon thought that everything was happening too fast. If not for Tor, he would be dead already. He called out to Alexandria and she told him to shut up. She attacked and told him not to piss her off anymore. Eon smiled and said she was fine. Tor told him that they are the 4 horsemen. An attack like that is not enough to break her. However, they need a lot of strength to fill up something like this. Tor told Arian that they should attack. Arian grunted at his words, while Silenus finished his snack and broke the stone. Tor told Eon that he would have to let him go. Don't worry, they'll kill that thing before it has a chance to get to it. Eon said that since Tor says it, then everything will be fine. Tor released him and Eon shouted that everything would be all right. He landed badly and twisted his leg. Tears of pain came into his eyes, and he saw a bright light behind him that attacked him. Silenus repelled the monster's attack in time. He prepared and swung his weapon. Eon wondered, is he going to give it up? Silenus threw his weapon at the monster, but it flew under him and pierced into the ground. a bright violet light began to descend from the ground and it began to crumble. The monster's legs fell into the ground and Arian said it was a great throw. He came closer and began to conjure. He used his death grip ability and the shadow of the monster seemed to come to life and began to grab the monster. Arian told it to stand still and the dark shadows continued to grab the monster. At this time, Alexandria enters the battle. She ran and told the monster that she should not be forgotten about her. She'll tear it to shreds. She approached the monster, braced herself for a dash, and with a quick movement cut the monster's arm into several pieces. The monster was surprised and did not immediately realize that his hand was cut. It fell to the ground and Tor said it was his turn now. He raised his hammer into the sky and it was charged with lightning. He said they made it easy for him. His hammer filled with lightning and he said that the perfect target is the one that can't move. He hit the monster with his huge hammer and thick smoke rose up. Tor said he had fun. Eon looked at him admiringly and whispered that it was incredible. Tor thanked the others for their help. Silenus yawned and said he was just showing off. Alexandria ran up to them and asked, did they see her move? It was cool, right? Eon thought that the four of them took down such a powerful boss like it was nothing. What about him? He only got in the way. He is useless. Suddenly, someone's voice was heard, which said that they had come for his power of wealth. Adventurers are greedy as always. The riders were surprised, and the voice of the man said that they were almost there. Arian said it was an infernal lord. The lord said that the last step separates them from the reward of the dungeon. Tor held out his hand to Eon to help him up. An altar appeared from the ground, and the lord said that they seemed to be such good friends, so he suggested they play a game. The riders saw the sacrificial altar, and the lord said that let them decide which of them was destined to die and sacrifice him on this altar. If they refuse, the dungeon will close forever. They have 10 minutes. Eon was very frightened, and the lord said that now they would really have fun. Eon silently echoed his words about deciding which of them is destined to die, otherwise the dungeon will close. He looked up at Tor and asked if they should leave the dungeon then, right? They don't want to be trapped. He called to Tor and looked at him in fear. Arian told Eon that Tor understood what would happen next. They are the 4 horsemen, irreplaceable heroes of this world. Eon began to understand what was going on, and Arian said that he was just an errand boy. Tor can always find something new. At these words, Tor clenched his teeth. He understood what he would have to do. Eon took out his sword with trembling hands and shouted, "Will they sacrifice it for the promised reward? Are they crazy? They are heroes. They should protect the weak, not kill them." He remembered his words that one day he wanted to be like them. Tears welled up in his eyes, and he said in a trembling voice that they were an example for him. How could they? Do they really think that all the power in the world is worth what they are going to do? At the same moment, he was pierced by a sword. Blood poured out of his mouth, and Tor, who pierced him with a sword, said that it was. Tears streamed down Eon's cheeks and mixed with scarlet blood. Silenus dragged Eon to the altar, and he wondered why did it end like this. He remembered the question that did something happen to him on their missions, and Eon thought, didn't he promise to protect him? Silenus placed it on the altar and offered to end it. Arian told Alexandria to slit his throat, and she gave him a displeased look. She sharpened her sword and said that, as always, the dirty work was on her. She walked over to Eon, who was still breathing. She raised her sword over him and lowered it with a sharp movement, but Eon threw her sword away and it flew towards Silenus. A sharp blade wounded him in the eye and he clutched at his own wound. Alexandria got mad and said he was a brat. Let him give up and die at last. She grabbed him by the neck and pressed him against the altar. In a hoarse voice, Eon said that one day they would get what they deserved. Now he realized they weren't real heroes. Those who should be on this altar are they? Silenus asked in a rage. Did he even understand what he had done? He hit him in the chest, and from his strength even cracks went through the altar. While Silenus was beating him, he thought he was not sorry. They decided without hesitation to kill him. Does strength determine the value of life? Does he really deserve to die? If so, he hopes that in his next life he will be stronger. He fell into the abyss and felt cold. Is this the afterlife? He was in front of the Lord, and he told Eon that there he was. He sat on the throne and congratulated him on winning the game. He looked up at him and said that he was in the gates of madness. In the gates of... Eon was surprised. Is this the gate of madness? He said he had never heard of this place. The Lord said that the gates of madness exist on the borderline between logic and insanity. Someone like him couldn't find it. Eon recognized his voice. He is the same infernal lord they heard in their heads. It's because of him. At the same moment, a great pain pierced him, and the Lord told him to finish the sentence. He asked if he forgot. He showed him the King and Joker cards and said that it was not he who sent him here, but his friends. Eon thought he was right. The 4 horsemen sacrificed him, and for what? For the sake of strength and wealth. What did they already have in bulk? The Lord told him not to lose heart. Didn't he hear what he said? He twirled his finger in the air and said that he had won the game. Eon asked what he means. He uttered his earlier words that let them decide which of them was destined to die and let him be sacrificed on this altar. On his fingers was a bunch of golden keys. He untwisted a bunch of keys on his finger and said that in his favorite games there can only be one winner, the one who is least expected, and as the winner he will grant him the power of the gates of madness. He grants him his power. Eon was surprised by his words and asked, "Who is he?" He replied that he was the infernal lord of madness, the Mad King. Eon said he was killed. Wouldn't any gift for him be wasted? The Mad King said it was not true. He could gain new life. A bunch of keys flew up to Eon, and the Mad King said that this new life in which he would be stronger. But this gift has its price. You need to sacrifice something for good things. His strength is based on insanity. If he uses it too much, he may lose his mind. But he thinks that such a sacrifice is better than death. He asked, so what does he think of it? Will he accept this power? Or will he resign himself to the gaping emptiness of death? Eon thought that all his life he was just expendable, and perhaps everyone was right in calling him useless and weak. He thought that by working for someone strong he could learn new things, and one day he would be just like them. But nothing has changed. They are just greedy jerks. After clearing the dungeon, he was supposed to return home, but the 4 horsemen took away this opportunity from him. He will show them. He looked at the Mad King and asked him to grant him his power. No matter what it costs him, he must come back to prove to them that he can change. He grabbed a bunch of golden keys, and the Mad King said that was fine. It looked like they would get along. The gates began to open, and he said he made the right choice. A bright light blinded Eon, and the Mad King said that one game ends and another begins. He can't wait to see how he will live his new life. Along with these words, he tossed the King and Joker cards into the air and laughed. Eon approached the gate and thought that if this is really a second chance, will he manage? Can he prove them all wrong? The 4 horsemen said that the aura of the Infernal Lord had completely dissipated. This idiot fooled them. There is no award and never was? Did they just kill that kid? Arian said that they would go and see if there was anything new, and besides, Salinas needed medical attention. Salinas said he was fine. Alexandria cursed quietly and suggested that Tor leave. There was nothing to be done about it. Tor took one last look at Eon and turned around. The riders left and a dark aura began to emanate from Eon's body. A system window appeared in front of Eon, congratulating Eon on receiving the system's madness gate from the Mad King. He respawned with the first level. Eon asked, "What is it?" He drew attention to the line on which it was written that he was reborn with the first level, and asked what this even means. He opened his eyes and said that this crazy infernal lord really did it. He looked at the night sky and said that he really brought it back. He got up and said it was so wonderful. He thought he was lying. He looked around and wondered where he was. He saw only corpses around him and was horrified. He shuddered and screamed, "Why are there so many corpses here?" A system window appeared in front of him and he was surprised. It announced a new training task. He needs to destroy 20 raiders who plundered the village of Tulros. He asked incomprehensibly, "Destroy the raiders. This cannot be." He turned sharply and saw that the whole village was on fire. The Mad King straightened his hat and asked Eon how he would play now. Eon asked, "What the hell is going on here?" A creature crawled out of the system window, which scared Eon. He screamed in fright and the creature laughed. He said that he was caught. Eon grabbed his sword and asked what it was. Where did he come from? The creature thought he was already on the brink. He cleared his throat and said his name was Kyorios. He was a dream eater, but he can call him K. Eon shuddered and said he understood. K said that the Mad King sent him to him to explain the Madness Gate system to him. He asked, did he want to become stronger? Eon confirmed his words, and K said that then he would teach him how to climb to the top. He said that he was dead, but Eon interrupted him and said that the Mad King brought him back. K said he was reborn. The system is a gift from the Mad King, Eon asked. What is it? K replied that it was a game. The Mad King wouldn't give him all his strength in one go. He had to earn it. The Mad King channels his powers through the Madness Gate system. He will start from the first level. He will continue to receive experience points or XP for defeating enemies and completing tasks. Gaining XP contributes to the leveling, that is. It will make him stronger. Eon scratched the back of his head and asked if this would make him stronger. But how? Kay replied that he would become stronger with skills and natural stats. He wanted to say something else, but he was interrupted by a man's voice. The hijacker asked if there was a survivor. Another hijacker asked what happened to his clothes. He is different from the other villagers. The man asked, what's the difference? Either way, he must die. Kay said this is the perfect chance to test his skills. Eon got scared and rushed to run from the raiders. Kay was surprised and asked where did he run. The raider chuckled and asked if he was running away. He ordered the other raiders to catch him. Eon hid in an abandoned house. Kay found him and asked why he decided to run away. Eon put his finger to his lips and told him to be quiet or they would hear him. Kay said that only those touched by the abyss could see and hear him. He flew up to him with displeasure and said that he did not answer him anything. He again asked why he ran away. Eon didn't have an answer, and Kay asked if he didn't say he wanted to change. He angrily asked, was it a lie? Eon gritted his teeth and replied that it wasn't. Kay said let him get up then and asked if he was afraid to die again, right? Or perhaps something else. In any case, the Mad King did not resurrect him so that he would run away again for the rest of his life. He will show him how to kill them. While the raiders were looking for Eon, one of them said he couldn't get far. Another hijacker said that maybe someone else found him. One of the raiders noticed something in the window of the destroyed house and asked if it was him. The other hijacker said he didn't see anything. The raider drew his sword and told his buddies to stay here. He would go and check quickly. He kicked down the door and saw Eon, who was standing with his back to him. He grinned and said, that's where he is. Now he will go with him. The man, whose body was covered in blood, saw a doll lying on the floor and thought, this doll, this is impossible. Suddenly he remembered how in the clear sky he gave this very doll to a little girl who jumped for joy when she received this gift and hugged the doll. The man looked at it smiling. Here he walks along the ground among the bloodied corpses of monsters, stops and sees a burning house in front of him. The body of some girl and a doll lay on fire, but the fire ignited more and more. The man grabbed the doll, squeezed it in his hand, and yelled at Eon in the cloak, where did he get it? And added that he answered. Suddenly the girl behind the man asked him, Daddy, why are you doing this? Why is he killing all these people? It was a doll whose eyes lit up in a dark color. The man was frightened and looked inquiringly at what was happening. The crack of the fall of the doll was heard, and at that moment Eon turned to the man and asked again, so why? The doll again asked why he became like this and suddenly began to turn into a huge monster. The man's eyes were in tears and he asked, Elaine? The monster that originated from the doll stood up and asked how much blood was on his hands. And the monster showed before him a lot of bloodied dead. The man saw this. His eyes were filled with horror. He looked at one of the dead who was crawling towards him and said this. But before he could finish speaking, the monsters began to attack. He realized that these were the villagers. They ran at him, showing their ruined teeth and stretching out their arms towards him. He began to fight with these monsters, hitting the blade directly into the head of one of the monsters. He bit his lip and said with tears in his eyes, let him be forgiven. He is a terrible father. He doesn't know what made him this way. Since he lost her, nothing has been the same. He will never forget her voice on the night the house caught fire, and she was there. She screamed for help. She was hot. Her piercing cries were heard that night. He does not know what happened to him, but he lost himself. Can she forgive him now? The corpses of people were reaching out to him while he was saying these words. Suddenly Eon pressed him to himself, cut him with his sword, and said that, unfortunately for him, there would be no forgiveness for him. Tears were still streaming from his eyes, and blood was starting to come out of his mouth. Eon added that this was for all his actions, after which he killed him with a sword and he fell to the floor with a crash. The system window reports skill, active skill, hallucination level 1, cost 1 madness point. The skill allows you to make your victim experience hallucinations, filled with the strongest fears of the victim for 30 seconds. Can be used on up to 5 targets at the same time. The owner of the skill must make eye contact with the victim for successful activation. Current progress is 1 out of 20. At that moment, some people approached this house who did not understand what was happening here, as they noticed a body lying on the floor. One of them asked, Igor? After the question was asked, Eon came out of the house. People were surprised. Did this kid kill him? Eon thought that Kay was right. He doesn't have time to sympathize with these monsters. If he wants to become stronger, then he needs to change immediately. People looked questioningly at Eon and asked what. The man looked up and saw a huge monster, from whose mouth half of the man's body was sticking out, and after he paid attention to this, a lot of snakes attacked him from the ground, which writhed and climbed on him. He thought, "What is this?" But nothing interfered with his legs, as Eon again applied the power of hallucinations. The people were frightened by their visions, and Eon wasted no time and killed both of them. Kay said it was good. There are already 3. There are 17 more left. Eon turned to the victims. It was unpleasant for him to look at, but he replied, "Yes, the system says that using this skill, hallucinations, costs 1 insanity. What does it mean?" Kay replied, "Well, most mages use mana or some other source to charge their skills, but since he draws his powers from the Madness Gate, things are a bit different. Using Madness Gate-related skills is calculated in madness. His insanity is 0 out of 100. He is a perfectly sane person, so his insanity bar starts at 0. The more skills he uses, the greater his madness bar. His madness is 30 out of 100. And the deeper he sinks into madness, but before Kay could finish, as Eon thought, it turns out that the more he uses the power of the Mad King, the faster he will go crazy. Well, like the Mad King warned about it, what happens when the madness bar fills up? Kay smiled and replied that he would have to find out for himself. Eon frowned at Kay and stood with a bloodied sword. Then he turned around and walked on. Kay asked, "Where is he going?" He closed his eyes and asked Kay, "What does he think?" "There are 17 monsters left in this village. He goes hunting. A group of warriors has gathered in the village. One of them asks the other, 'Are these all survivors?' The answer is yes, boss. They combed the whole village." The boss replied, "Great. Now they need to leave the women, as they can raise a decent price for them, and the rest need to be killed." The people who lived in the village were seized by these soldiers and bandaged, sat on the ground together. Suddenly something interrupted their conversation, and they looked back, where they suddenly saw in the distance how Eon was dragging 2 dead people behind him. When Eon got closer to them, he threw the corpses on the ground and said that at first it was hard for him to kill their friends, but seeing what they freaks are doing now, maybe his business is not so bad. The bandaged people looked at each other and were glad to see Eon. The warriors grouped together, being at a loss. The boss came closer and asked if the adventurer came to such a wilderness. Eon quickly looked at the boss and asked him if he considered himself a hero. He replied that to go out like this in the open, he can make a dying wish. Eon was surrounded by armed men. Some of them pointed their arrows at him, counted something like 15, 16, 17. Eon looked around and said, "Looks like they are all here, Kay." This asked again, all gathered together. "Looks like easy prey." Eon thought about how normally he would have thought he would be afraid to fight these enemies alone, but for some reason he doesn't feel anything. After these thoughts, he grabbed swords, used his magic, and everyone around him began to see hallucinations. They froze. One of them pointed a weapon at his throat. At that moment, Eon quickly ran towards them. The boss saw what was happening and asked what. Eon was approaching him faster and faster, and he was already on the defensive. Suddenly, a fierce fight started. Everyone had 2 swords, and at the moment of the fight, Eon asked the boss, "What about him? Is he proud of his accomplishments? With his bullying of the unarmed?" He looked into the boss's eyes as their swords crossed. The boss replied that he was doing what he had to do. This was an opportunity for him. Eon said that boss speaks just like him. Eon stopped in front of the attacking warriors, and some memories of Thor surfaced in front of him. Eon said, "People's lives, these are not steps for him." The warriors were suddenly dumbfounded and did not understand what had happened. The boss asked why they froze, and at this moment Eon begins to attack each of them, piercing their heads and bodies with a sword through and through. He was able to cope with many warriors. The boss said, "What a horror. Who is this damn kid? Lots of attacked and bloody corpses lay around in the wasteland." Eon rushed towards the boss. "Why can't they stop him? The boss is screaming, you need to shoot him, now!" Suddenly the remaining warriors drag a huge pipe with them onto the battlefield. What is this thing? And suddenly this weapon starts shooting right at Eon's head. He sees it in front of him, and at that moment everything around him explodes. The boss says, "Hit the..." But suddenly he hears Eon's voice telling Kay that he can't believe it worked. Amidst a column of black smoke, Eon shouts that he has trained well on them, on these guys. After which he creates a magical bright ball, and the system window reports. Skill, active skill infusion. Level 1 costs 3 points of insanity. The skill allows the user to inject tainted energy into body parts or objects, temporarily increasing the physical damage dealt and strength of those parts. Progress 9 out of 20. Eon directs a magic ball at the warriors, quickly starts running at them and shouts, "Catch!" After these words, he throws a magic ball at the warriors. The boss resists the blow and dodges it. The ball flies through all the warriors and there is a strong explosion. Boss says, "What's wrong with that damned hand? This kid, is he a monster?" Progress 16 out of 20. Eon uses his magic hand and kills one by one. Progress 17 out of 20. Warriors were ordered to grab hostages. The warriors begin to rush towards them, grab the hostages and put a knife to their throats. They think they can use them but before they can finish, Eon answers them, no, they can't. The warriors begin to look into the distance in fright and clutch at their heads, shouting loudly. Eon says, "Use the defenseless as a shield for their crimes, what a scum they are." And after these words, he creates a magical funnel and kills the warriors while an illusion exists in front of them. The released people look on as Eon deals with each enemy. Kay noticed the last warrior and said, "Here it is, the last one." Suddenly, a warrior lying on the ground extended his hand to him and said, "Please don't do this." Eon came closer to him and said with a sinister look that there was no need to harm the villagers. "Put women. You can raise a decent price for them. The rest need to be killed." Do these words remind him of something? The warrior just looked away and lowered his gaze. If Eon lets him go, he will continue this cycle. And after these words, he finished off the enemy, uttering strange cries. Madness 13 out of 100. Eon thought, "What, already?" Kay said, "Come on, Eon, it's sure he can handle more." Then he began to scream, "Beware, he attacks." Eon noticed a knife in front of him, with which one of the warriors tried to attack him. But using his magic, Eon crushed the knife into pieces. The warrior replied, understandably, "It looks like they deserved it, Executioner." Fury was evident in Eon's eyes, and he immediately attacked this enemy. The system window says that the tutorial task to destroy the Marauders has been completed. The Raiders have been destroyed 20 out of 20, plus 100 experience points. The system window congratulates, he got the second level. Sometime later, a woman apologizes to the girl and reports Eon's death. They were standing in the living room of someone's house, and a woman was hugging a girl who was already in tears. The woman reported that the strongest adventurers were with him. The warrior girl who stood next to them and watched the reaction was in a state of shock, her eyes glittering with sadness. The girl asked how this could happen. "Eon is dead. Didn't she promise her that she would protect him, Gaia?" Gaia, being in the forest in front of a high rock in a special armed outfit, looked up. A day earlier. A large crowd of people gathered in the small town, turning around as Silenus, Arion, Thor, and Alexandria walked down the street like heroes after their return. Someone said they frequented the gates of madness, as expected of the strongest of this world. People shouted for joy that they were saved. They passed into the high castle, passing along the path of the forest. They ended up in a room with high ceilings and walked along the carpeted paths closer to the man sitting in the throne. He asked, "Mad King? Did they interact with the Infernal Lord?" People have never been able to do this. The heroes made a deep bow before the Emperor Hyzen of Herodia. The Emperor said that the dungeons have been spawning all over Herodia at an arranged rate ever since the Gates of Madness was discovered. Something has changed. He knows that the 4 of them have just returned, but other adventurers need their help clearing the dungeons. They don't have enough men, so he kills their bounty. Arion replied that they would do their best, Lord Hyzen. The Emperor bowed his head, leaned on his arm, and thought, after which he said, "Thor, what does he think about victory in the Gates of Madness?" Thor replied that this victory did not bring him any pleasure. Lord Hyzen said that's how, and dismissed them, saying that they could go. While they were walking loudly on the stone tiles in the castle, someone called him Thor. It was Gaia. She sternly said that she did not see Eon next to them and loudly asked where he was. Thor lowered his gaze and answered quietly that he was no more. Gaia stopped in the middle of the corridor, completely at a loss, the heroes avoiding her. Thor said, "Sorry, Gaia, he couldn't protect him." There were tears in her eyes. He was part of her past, a part of her that she had long ago discarded. She stood in front of a rock and touched it with her hand, but she always thought he would live a long life. Suddenly, with all her anger, she began to beat her hand against the rock and scream, "Horror! Horror!" She made such strong blows that everything around was lit up with light, stones scattered in different directions from such force. Although she was not there, she feels the weight of his loss weighed heavily on her soul. She stopped, and suddenly she had a memory of how she and Eon were in the middle of the field. The weather was clear, there were many flowers around, and Eon, holding out a beautiful flower to her, said that no matter what happens, he will protect her. She said she would protect him. Suddenly the sun began to set, and a beautiful sunset formed, giving off several warm shades. She moved away from him. After these memories, her eyes lit up with rage, and she said she would avenge him, remembering Thor's eyes. After these reflections, she moved on. Gaia had a World Adventurer rating of 1. At this time, the defenseless villagers began to thank Eon for saving their lives. Eon stood in front of them. He was happy to hear this. He replied that he had done nothing of the sort. The girl standing in front of him couldn't get the words out due to the intense rush of emotions and tears that they would have been without him, but she couldn't finish it. And Eon said that he understood what it's like to feel in a hopeless situation. In the eyes of these people, a huge gratitude was visible for such a heroic deed that Eon had done to save them. They looked at him and smiled. Eon said he was just glad he made it in time and smiled back at them. And now, we need to bury everyone properly. The next morning, the villagers wished good luck to Eon, and added that they would rebuild the village for his next visit and throw an incredible feast, they promise. They escorted him with cries of joy, wailing, wishing that he would return as soon as possible. Eon waved his hand and said that he was looking forward to it very much. After seeing the great attitude towards him, he wondered, so this is what it feels like to be a hero? He remembered how he was killed, how he was hurt and scared. After that, he told Kay that he wanted to become stronger, so that he could become a better adventurer and help other people, causing him to remember the eyes of old friends that took it away from him. He began to continue, but Kay said that he already understood everything and that there was no need to be such a slob. They will make him the strongest. This is just the beginning, Eon. For several weeks, he focused on leveling up. By killing enemies and completing tasks, he gained experience. Experience raised his level, which gives him new skills and attribute points. This is only 5. Intelligence, strength, agility, endurance, spirit. He put more points into the spirit, as Kay told him that it would increase his mental stability and help curb his own madness as well. He tries to carefully use the power of the Mad King, but he is well aware that his own powers are far from ideal. When he is attacked by a huge monster in the middle of the forest, he uses his magic hand to attack it and rises up, after which he hits the head of the monster and blood spurts are formed. He tries to attack using both his arms and legs, making jump attacks and realizing speed potentials. It hits some parts of the forest with bright fiery shots, from which loud sounds are formed. But tapping into the Mad King's power allows him to fight on par with opponents he would not have been able to handle before. It's so exciting to watch your own rise. Eon thought that if the action continues at this pace, then he will quickly catch up with Thor, right? His insanity has reached 27 out of 100. Quests and monsters give so much experience. A month after the massacre with the Marauders, Eon walks over the wooden bridge over the river. Kay is next to him and says that the best way to become stronger and get better equipment is to clear the dungeons. Eon and Kay walk towards the huge wooden ship that housed the Silver King's Guild. The system window says that this is a new dungeon, an underwater kingdom. This is the beginning of a new chapter in his life. Someone says, so it turns out he's their new mercenary adventurer. Eon turns around and sees a man descending from the side of the ship and says, he told them, like an idiot, that they don't need outsiders. This man's name is Falcon. He is the leader of the Silver King's Guild. He stood in front of Eon and was smoking a huge cigar maliciously. A girl named Talia, who has the second rank in the Silver Kings, replied while holding her glasses and looking at the written piece of paper, "Boss, they have money, and this was necessary for a dungeon of this level." Wen, who is the third rank in the Silver Kings, answered yes, but why do they need 2 mercenaries? Especially since one of them is a child. Kay crossed his arms, frowned, and said, "Here's a bunch of assholes." Eon smiled and said that he was not a child, to which Falcon replied that he did not mean him and let off steam from a cigar. Someone said he shouldn't eat. The blonde-haired guy gnawed meat with incredible speed and pleasure. Someone on the ship says that this food was meant for their guild master. The guy didn't answer, so what's wrong with that? Let him fight him for that meat. This was the second mercenary adventurer named Leo. People were surprised that he said that. Falcon told everyone to listen to him. They are sailing. Wen added, "It looks like the atmosphere is already so lively." Eon asked if this guy is too young to be an adventurer. But then he remembered that Gaia was the same way when she joined the adventurers. He watched the guys fight for a piece of meat on the ship. Remembering Gaia, he became interested in how she was doing, which made him sad and thought that most likely she was saving the world. He looked at the bright sun and clear sky and dreamed that someday he would be able to stand next to her as an equal. But suddenly he noticed how Leo lands right on him because of the fight. Leo got up, holding a piece of meat in his hand, and dealt with the rest of the guys on board who prevented him from eating. Eon said, "Watch out, boy." He turned around and asked if he wanted to be attacked by Leo too. Kay started to rejoice and said he hates everyone here, but this boy is funny. Eon became sad and asked why are they both so cruel. Talia informed the boss that they were ready to sail. The boss, who was already standing near the steering wheel, turned around and turned the steering wheel sharply, causing Leo and Eon to fall and land on the floor with a crash. Falcon said that you need to listen to him. Today the Silver Kings will clear the Rank D dungeon, the sunken city of Atlantis. This is their chance to make a name for themselves. The heroes stood up straight and began to listen to the boss with a smile on their faces. The passage of Atlantis is only the beginning of their ascent. They will become the greatest guild of Herodia. One must follow him, and they will be remembered as heroes. He continued to smoke a cigar and steer the ship, and behind him a crowd of people began to rejoice and raise their hands. Eon thought, for a guild that is still clearing a Rank D dungeon, they have a lot of resources. Suddenly he remembered Thor asking if he was afraid, and also the way he said that he had been working as his assistant for a long time and knew this facial expression. In a way, this guildmaster's ambition slightly reminds him of something, but he didn't have time to think it through until Kay started acting strange and anxious. Eon turned around and asked if something was wrong, Kay? It answered no, it was strange, but he thought he felt a familiar aura. Their ship with a huge sail was visible to the Mad King, who said that now it was chaos. Are they following him? He covered his face with his hand and said that after all, it looked like he wouldn't have to wait long. This time, Leo was screaming loudly on the ship. He was asking if they, freaks, paid him for help, right? They'd better let him go or he'll make you regret it. The people on the ship paid no attention to his screams and calmly passed by, while Leo was tied with a rope to a post upside down. He was screaming, "They freaks, he knows they can hear him." Eon came closer to him and asked if he knew that his people would not start listening like that. Eon smiled and approached Leo with good intentions, but Leo shouted that he did not ask him for advice and called him a blockhead. He simply asked to untie the rope. Then he would go against the order of the captain. Who is he calling an idiot? Eon and Kay got closer to Leo, and Eon took out a bottle of water, opened the lid, offered it to Leo, and added that he still wants to help him in any way he can. Leo felt sad and he said, "Okay, let's go." Eon offered him a drink and brought the bottle to Leo's mouth, and the water splashed onto his face. He began to yell, "Why is he pouring this water like that?" Eon apologized and reminded Leo to hang upside down. Kay looked at what was happening and said that they were both idiots. The heroes started a conversation. Eon told Leo that he had never heard such a name in southern Herodia before. He replied that he was from the north. Before he became an adventurer, he was a farmer. Eon sweated closer to Leo and asked again with a happy expression, "Is that true?" He too. But Leo is much younger than he was at the start of his career. Eon asked why he started so early. Such a life is very dangerous. Did his family agree? Leo asked again. His family. Memories from childhood appeared before him as he looks into the distance at the sea at a destroyed, burned, and sinking ship. But he replied that yes, the family members are fine with everything, after which he added that because of all these suddenly awakening dungeons, he knew that he could not just sit on the farm with so many monsters roaming around. He wanted to get out of there to change something. Well, he is going to become the strongest adventurer. These words alerted Eon. He added that he wants to become even stronger than the legendary Silenus. And he imagined himself laughing on the top of the mountain above him. Eon asked, "Is that how? Does he admire him?" After which Eon began to tell that in fact he had already met Silenus. His brute strength is unmatched. Leo was delighted with this news and asked again with admiration, "Does he know him? He must have been delighted to meet someone like that. Saving the world from monsters and dungeons with sheer force sounds so cool, doesn't it? This is how a real hero should be." Eon was upset and remembered how that same Silenus ruthlessly killed him. Eon told Leo that he was quite determined for his age. He respects it. The girl on board warned everyone that a whirlpool was ahead. Falcon assumed they were in place. While he taxied and finished smoking his cigar, Talia stood next to him. Someone shouted, "In positions!" People began to scatter in different directions and ask again, "What?" "Whirlpool." Eon also started to run, but Leo started yelling at him to stop and get him out of here first. Eon turned around and looked at him in bewilderment, after which he said, "Yes, they are joking." Atlantis, the entrance to the dungeon, a raging whirlpool. Eon walked to the edge of the ship to look at what was happening outside. Wen approached him and asked, "Bewitching, isn't it?" The very awakening of Atlantis, this whirlpool rages furiously. And there is only one way to get into the dungeon. You need to go straight into this stormy whirlpool. Eon asked, but how can a ship even get through this intact? Even if they get to Atlantis, how will they get back? Wen replied, don't be afraid, they have everything swept up and rubbed the back of his head. He doesn't believe in them at all, Eon? Eon wondered why he dodged the question. Kay tells Eon that something has appeared behind him. The tentacle grabs Eon and Wen notices it. The tentacle takes Eon into the water. Kay looks at this and calls Eon. Eon manages to draw his sword and cut the tentacle apart. He uses the infusion skill and jumps off the water and jumps onto the ship. Eon says that he thought he was about to die. Kay says it was a good use of the infusion. Wen wonders if this is magic. Eon asks what just happened. Big octopus? Wen says it's much worse, it's the Kraken. But a legendary monster of that level shouldn't be protecting a D-rank dungeon. What is he even doing here? Another tentacle grabs the guild member and takes them into the water. Everyone on the ship was shocked by what they saw. The ship was already surrounded by many tentacles. Falcon says everyone should attack this monster. Eon asks, how are they supposed to kill this thing? Leo tells Eon that he must get him out of here as soon as possible because he can help. He must believe him. Eon runs to Leo and Wen says he can't do it. Eon cuts the rope and says that now is not the time for internal strife because they need all the help they can get. Doesn't he think so? Wen didn't answer. Talia calls out to Wen and says that he is being attacked from behind. Wen notices a tentacle that has already almost grabbed him. Eon takes off and hits the tentacle with his hand surrounded by infusion and cuts it into pieces. Wen is amazed at his strength. Where did Talia find this guy? The crew member screams as the tentacle takes him. Eon rushes to his aid. Kay says that he needs to know that he can't save everyone and that he should focus on fighting the monster. Eon says he should speak for himself. He's not going to watch these people die. The voice of the infernal lord that resounded in Eon's head says that Kay is right. Their sacrifice is necessary to save the others. Eon's insanity scale has reached 30 points. Wen fires the crossbow and the shot causes the tentacle to let go of the crew member. Leo grabs the guy who fell into the water. Wen was shocked by what he saw. Leo laughs and says that he told those idiots that they should have released him sooner. They should thank him when he blows that big octopus to pieces. Leo holds his huge scroll in one hand and a crew member in the other, sitting on a bird of fire. Eon was surprised by this. Another tentacle grabs another crew member, which Wen and Eon notice. Falcon cuts a tentacle with a guy with a sword that is engulfed in flames. Falcon says they must kill the Kraken, and that's the order. Eon thinks he should believe that the Silver Kings can take care of each other and he can focus on what he came here for. Eon rushes at the monster and tells Wen that he must not let anyone else die, and he himself will finish this monster. After that, he jumps into the water. Leo picked him up and asked if he was going to kill him. Then he has to queue up for it. Kay says that the only way to kill this monster is to explode the crystal on its head. Eon asks to be thrown closer to those tentacles. Does he trust him? Leo tells this idiot that he just met him, and of course he doesn't believe him. Leo remembers that he tried to get him drunk, and that he was the one who set him free. Leo thought and agreed, after which he threw it into the water. Eon, falling into the water, thinks it's crazy. He sticks his sword into the tentacle as he falls down and thinks he doesn't need to pay attention to how dangerous it is. He just needs to act and then he will save everyone. Kay warns him of the danger. Eon notices the tentacle and jumps back at the moment of the attack. He grabs another tentacle, but at the same moment another tentacle appears behind him. Eon jumps and the tentacle misses. Wen says the Kraken has stopped attacking the ship. But why? Falcon says he seems to be only interested in Eon for some reason. Leo says he can't get any closer. Eon, jumping on the tentacles, thinks that he is almost there. He needs to try a little more and he can be done with it. A tentacle that suddenly appears hits Eon hard and knocks him aside. Everyone who looked at it was amazed by what they saw. The Lord of Madness smiles as Eon falls into the water. Eon continues to sink into the abyss while Kay screams that he needs to recover. He was right next to a terrible, huge monster with many processes and tentacles and opened his eyes, realizing that this was no Kraken. What the hell is this anyway? The creature opened its eyes and Eon realized that it was using hallucinations. Does this thing also draw its powers from the gates of madness? This creature can even see Kay. The monster stretched out its sinewy hand towards them. Suddenly, someone grabbed Eon by the arm and dragged him along. Leo gave him a ride on his narwhal and began to haul him to the surface as the monster yelled after them. They emerged from the water and plopped down on the... Leo had even begun to think that they would die there. It was not a kraken at all, and Leo stopped understanding what was happening. Eon understands that there can be no mistake here, and this aura definitely belongs to the Infernal Lord. Leo asked if they didn't kill the creature, so why did it suddenly stop attacking? Falcon says that the creature left the ship alone as soon as Eon fell into the water. Leo said the creature actually got scared when it saw him. Wen suggested that if that monster was still around, then they should leave while they could. Falcon refused because they are here to clear the dungeon and must go further. Leo pointed his finger at the funnel and asked if he had not seen how huge this monster was. If this creature returns, then the entire guild will come to an end. Falcon told Talia to do a rundown of the dead and damage done. She should tell the helmsman to take the ship away from the funnel. Tomorrow, they will clear Atlantis. Leo started yelling that if this thing came back, they wouldn't even enter the dungeon. Wen asked Talia if she thought they should. She interrupted him and said that he had already heard the words of the captain. They still won't budge. Those who are too frightened by the prospect of spending the night in these waters can swim back on their own. An aura began to emerge from the funnel. Eon said that this monster used a hallucination. Could it be that this thing has something to do with the Mad King? Kay knew that he had already felt this aura somewhere before. It seems that their paths have crossed with old acquaintances of the Mad King. He does not know what or who exactly is there, but everything becomes clearer. This dungeon is not Atlantis at all. At this time, Gaia was walking through the dungeon in which Eon was with 4 adventurers. She saw bloody footprints on the ground and tensed. On the floor, she saw a flower hairpin and realized that Eon was definitely there. Tears welled up in her eyes and an infernal lord appeared in front of her, who smiled madly looking at her. In the past, Gaia said that he could take it. Eon asked, but why? He gave it to her years ago to protect her, but she doesn't need protection anymore. And to be honest, she doesn't need him anymore either. Eon doesn't understand why she wants to toss him aside like they're strangers to each other. He was very tired of humiliation and betrayal. One day they will understand all his feelings. After that, Eon woke up as if from a nightmare. All these thoughts and distorted memories begin to spiral out of control. Kay said something happened and he is in danger now. A dark figure of a man with sharp claws in his hands appeared in the doorway. Eon saw this and threw the blanket up as the opponent's sharp weapon flew past him. He immediately moved to the enemy and grabbed him by the throat. Why did he try to kill him? He better answer before Eon rips his throat out. The guy sent him to hell. Kay said that those guys already got Leo. Eon threw the guy on the floor and came up with a new plan. Let him tell him where they dragged Leo? At this time, on the deck of the ship, members of the guild, Silver Kings, throw off the coffins into the water. Leo was in one of the coffins and opened his eyes to see 3 holes in the coffin in front of him. He started screaming and asked what it was all about. They must immediately let him out of there, otherwise he will kill them all. The guys stand near the corpses and wonder what they should do with it. This kid dared to argue with Falcon. The blonde guy said he didn't care. Leo is still a mercenary in the Falcon's employ, so they can't trust him. It would be better for them to be safe than sorry. The boys continued to stuff the ship members into the coffins. Leo asks them not to do this and suggested that they discuss everything. They nevertheless threw him into the water and turned around when they heard someone's voice. Eon dragged the bandit onto the deck and said that just a couple of hours ago they all fought together with their comrades and they trusted them. But still, those nasty assholes betrayed that trust. His mind went crazy and he said that until he finished them all, they should tell him where Leo was. Eon turned into some kind of huge monster. At this time, Leo is trying to open the lid of the coffin underwater and does not understand why it does not want to open. He has no intention of dying here. He sinks closer and closer to the terrible creature that is waiting for him at a depth. Through the hole in the lid of the coffin, he saw the light and did not understand what was happening. Eon realized that they had already thrown Leo overboard. With one deft move, he cut into the bodies of the guys because he needs to act quickly. He put his swords back into their scabbards and jumped straight into the water, praying that he would swim in time. He again saw that terrible creature, but now it is more important for him to understand which of the coffins Leo is in. Kay feels it closer to the bottom, right in the monster's clutches. Eon immediately moves forward while Kay tries to dissuade him, because he should not just get involved in this. Eon does not listen to him and remembers all those moments with Leo, begging all the gods not to torture this boy with their goals and dreams. He won't let them take all that away from Leo. He began to approach the creature closer and closer, and it noticed him. The creature started to use the hallucination again, but it is useless, because this skill will not work on Eon. Around the creature appeared a lot of guards with huge sharp teeth. Does not understand where these things appeared so suddenly. Kay says it's not real and he shouldn't believe it. The tentacles grabbed Eon and he realized that the madness of this contraption was stronger than him. If he's hallucinating, he just needs to calm down. The tentacles began to become transparent, and he wondered what connected this monster with the gates of madness. The monster stopped his thoughts and threw him away from him, with his tentacle. Kay decided to stay close to the toothy creature. Glowing jellyfish swim around Eon and he realizes he can't breathe. Does he really just drown here? Kay swam up to him and told him to paddle towards the funnel. He does not have time to explain everything because it is too far to the surface. Eon simply has no choice, and if he wants to live, then he must listen to Kay. Eon abruptly opened his eyes as his legs transformed and he moved straight towards the funnel. It turns out that there really is air here. Eon does not understand what the hell is going on here because there is no current in this whirlpool. How could Kay know this? Suddenly, a coffin containing Leo floated near them. He realized that Eon was nearby and asked him to help him, because right now he was being sucked right into the funnel. Eon shouted that he was already rushing towards him and tried to reach the coffin, but he was blinded by a very bright light. They ended up in an underwater, abandoned, gloomy city, Atlantis, at the same time on the ship. Wen kills a crew member and asks these idiots, did they really think they could escape by rioting? He thinks they are lucky that Eon woke them up, otherwise it would have been too late. But he doesn't see Eon or Leo on the ship. Wen puts a knife on a crew member and asks, where is Eon? The guy says he jumped into the water to save the white-haired child, but that was 30 minutes ago. If the Kraken hasn't grabbed them yet, then the ocean has. Wen asks, do they understand how many good people died today, and all because of their betrayal? Every last treacherous pig, they must kill them. This is what they deserve. At the same time in the whirlpool. Eon asks, is this Atlantis? How did they get inside this dungeon? Kay says that he has already told him that this is not Atlantis. Leo falls faster than Eon. Eon asks if this isn't Atlantis. Then where did they end up? The coffin with Leo flies into the glass roof of the building and gets inside. Eon asks Leo if he's okay. He follows him and wonders if there is air inside this room. For some reason, he can breathe in this water, but he still moves more slowly as if he were in ordinary water. He thinks they can deal with it later. For now, he should focus on helping Leo get out. What they saw surprised Eon and Kay. The handle of the huge door began to spin and the door opened. Leo asks Eon why is it taking so long to release it. The monster entered the room. Leo asks Eon, is he there? Eon hides from the monster behind a small fence. The system notifies that he has a new quest. He must survive for a minute with the one-eyed. The reward is unknown. Eon wonders if a new quest has appeared right now. This monster is one-eyed? Eon and Kay peek out from behind cover. The monster takes a step and Eon feels something. Does he not understand what it is? The system notifies that this is a level 20 monster of the lower world, one-eyed. Eon wonders if he's level 20? And what does the monster of the underworld even mean? Kay says that the monsters of the netherworld are monsters created from the power of the infernal lord, so they are usually tougher than the monsters he fought. Eon wonders, then how is he supposed to defeat this thing? Kay says he doesn't need to. He should look at his quest. He needs to survive for 60 seconds and he shouldn't fight it. All he needs is to survive. Eon thinks it's true, but what about Leo? Leo says if it's Eon, then he should stop playing and he should say something. Should he just leave it? He remembers the 4 traitors and sees Leo against their background, who extends his hand to him with a smile. He grabs his swords and is about to come out from behind cover, but something surprises him. One-eyed is gone. Eon asks if he just left. Eon thinks that fear is a paralyzing drug that pollutes the mind, body, and every thought. He wondered how he could get rid of fear, but over the years he realized that even courage does not get rid of it. All he can do is pretend it's not there. But now he realized that there is only one type of people who can truly be considered fearless. The only ones who act as if fear does not exist. They are crazy. The one-eyed jerked close to Eon and stabbed. Eon thinks this thing is faster than any monster he's ever faced. Monster of the underworld mean? Eon used the infusion skill and kicked the one-eyed one, followed by a sword kick, but the monster was able to dodge. Eon is surprised that this monster could dodge even in this position. One-Eye crouches down, causing Eon to be knocked down. One-Eye almost stabs Eon's torso, but he was able to push back with the infusion and avoided the attack. Eon thinks that this water is slowing him down, but his agility has also increased. Maybe he can use that to his advantage, especially with the infusion. But he uses the Madness Gate abilities way too often. His madness is higher than ever. Strengthening his spirit is meant to reduce his madness over time, but it can't stop if he keeps using his powers so often. The system notifies you that there are still 45 seconds left. Can Eon last another 45 seconds? He asks Kay what happens if the scale crosses the 40 mark. Kay says he knows he can't tell him about it. Eon thinks it's scary and it destroys his own mind in exchange for strength, facing an enemy who is much stronger than him. He is scared and maybe he can overcome this fear, but what if he completely eliminates the fear? One-Eyed rushes at Eon. Eon asks if he can hold his own for 45 seconds. Can he believe that this thought has crossed his mind? Mad King says this is a misrepresentation. One-Eyed strikes with both hands, but what happened stunned him. Eon blocks One-Eye's attack with his hands covered in infusion and says the right words are, "In 45 seconds, can he kill him?" Eon kicks and the One-Eye barely manages to dodge. Eon stabs and impales One-Eyed, pinning him to the floor. He grabbed the One-Eyed one and threw it into the cabinets that stand in the middle of the room. Eon says that this power he can use to do so. Leo tells Eon that he hears him standing there. What is happening there? He must let him out of here. Eon tears off the lid of the coffin. Leo asks why it took him so long to release it. Does he even know how scary it was to lie in a coffin that was filled with water? Wait, how can they even breathe? Eon says he should listen to him. Leo notices the One-Eyed one, who has risen from the last attack. Leo asks what is this thing and where are they located? Eon says that this thing is called One-Eyed and they are at the bottom of the ocean. Leo says that of course it is, he better explain it to him after. Eon smiles madly and asks if he is ready to kill this thing. Leo asks if he has a choice. Leo unrolls his scroll and Eon says he really doesn't. The system notifies you that there are 25 seconds left. Eon says that he should just follow his instructions. Leo, drawing symbols in the air, says that following his directions is fun. He summoned a magical trident. Eon knew that Leo was a summoner, but he thought it limited the beasts. Eon smiles and the One-Eyed one who approaches him inflicts a cut on his face, but he does not dodge but only smiles. Eon grabs the One-Eyed one and tells Leo that he has a fun idea. This new weapon of his looks pretty powerful. Why shouldn't he test this weapon? He must hit them with all the strength he has. Leo, of course, knew that Eon was a little crazy, but this is something else. He will, of course, play along with him, but let him not forget that it was his stupid idea. Leo's spear was right in the head of the One-Eyed and there was a very powerful explosion, from which even the glasses flew out. He threw a magic circle attack at the opponent and they were blown away a great distance. Eon had a feeling that Leo was strong, but it was all he expected. Kay reminded him to be safe as his health points are getting low. His HP points, 60, madness points, 45. The One-Eyed man with a torn suit began to sink into the abyss. Only 10 seconds left. The One-Eyed one kicked off the bottom and moved straight towards Eon, who doesn't understand how this thing can still move. Leo wants to help him, but Eon is too far away, and he just won't have time to do it. The One-Eyed one keeps swimming closer and closer to him. 10 seconds and low health, huh? The enemy pierced his body with a blade, and everyone was shocked by this. Eon unleashed his madness because he didn't have much time to kill him. It will count every second from that time. He attacked the One-Eyed one and threw him away from him, causing the One-Eyed one to slam into the bottom of the ocean. The system notifies that the quest is completed. Now Kay understands why Mad King chose him. The One-Eyed one was literally smeared along the bottom and his allies found out about it. They cannot believe that the One-Eyed man was killed by some traveler. But this is not just a traveler, because the unknown can recognize this aura anywhere. It seems the old man has found a new champion. The Mad Prince Arunos said it's about time. At this time, Eon clutched at his wound and realized that he had won. But in this fight he lost too much blood. The system notifies that he defeated the One-Eyed and received the 7th level. As a reward, he receives new ability, infection new item, pure gem new system function, inventory. But looking at all this, he understands that the greater the risk, the greater the reward. He drank a healing potion, which he luckily carries with him at all times. Kay said that now he can carry all the items in his inventory so he doesn't have to worry about it. This magical inventory is pretty convenient. This allows him to store and summon any item he owns with just one command. If only he had this thing when he was Thor's assistant. So this is the pure gem from the quest reward. A crystal gem grade A with magical properties. Crushing it instantly removes all madness from its wielder. Something like this can be useful down the line. He doesn't think he should use it right now because he feels like he can push his mind a little further. He removed the crystal and decided to look at his new skill. Active Skill Infection Level 1. Use 10 Madness. Skill allows the user to transfer madness to and from another host if they are held for 5 consecutive seconds. Very helpful. But why does it cost madness to use it? Can't he just transfer the additional 10 madness as well? Kay told him to think for a second. It's a useful ability, but read the description carefully. One limitation is that if he ever allows himself to reach 95% insanity, it will be impossible to transfer the insanity to another infested host. Another example? If he transfers insanity to someone he cares about, then an extra 10 points of insanity can really drive someone crazy. Kay asked what else? If he fails to keep someone for 5 consecutive seconds to transfer the madness, then he exposes himself to even more madness. That's right. If he fails to hold on to his target, then the infection will simply add 10 insanity points to his points without transferring any away. Therefore, he must responsibly dispose of this ability, otherwise he will simply go completely crazy. Eon looked at Leo, who was examining the corpse of the one-eyed one, and called him. Does he trust him? Leo assumes so, but why would he need to know? Eon needs him to do something for him. They shook hands and Eon promised that it would pass quickly. He began transferring his madness into Leo's body, and his score dropped to 35. He feels that his mind has become much clearer after his madness dropped below 40. He only transferred 10 points of insanity into Leo's body, and he seems to be mentally stable, so it should be fine. But suddenly, Leo started smiling crazy and said it was fun. Now he has 41 insanity points, and they have to repeat it again.